Welcome to the Nonviolent Jesus podcast. I'm John, Father John Deere, and today I'm speaking with my friend Gerry Straub about his new book about life in Haiti and his life filming among extreme poverty. This is a project of www.beatitudecenter.org, where you can find many other podcasts and regular Zoom programs on the nonviolence of Jesus and practicing nonviolence and working for a more just, more nonviolent world. So let's begin as usual with just a little moment of prayer. And I just invite you, wherever you are, to just take a deep breath and to just relax, and let's all recenter ourselves and notice how we're feeling. And I invite you to enter into the presence of the God of peace who loves you infinitely and personally and everyone everywhere. And let's welcome the risen nonviolent Jesus here with us. And just take a moment to ask for whatever grace and blessing you need to follow the nonviolent Jesus more faithfully and do God's will. God of peace, thank you for all the many blessings of life, love, and peace that you give us. Be with us now as we reflect together with Gerry on your call to follow the nonviolent Jesus in service among the poor and needy and to work for a more nonviolent, more just world. Bless us, inspire us, disarm us, heal us, strengthen us, and send us out to do your will, that we might do our part to end poverty and unjust suffering and all forms of corporate greed and systemic injustice, racism, war, nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, and fascism, that we might be your holy beatitude people, your holy peacemakers, and welcome your reign of universal love, nonviolence, and peace on earth in the name of the nonviolent Jesus. Amen. Well, it's a great blessing to welcome my friend, filmmaker, author, and founder of the Santa Chiara Children's Center in Haiti, Gerry Straub. Santa Chiara is an orphanage for children in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, where Gerry has lived for the last many years until he had to flee about a year ago because of the total violence that has swept through Haiti. Since then, living in Florida, where we're talking today, he's written a great new book telling the story of his journey as a Hollywood producer, once of the General Hospital, the soap opera, to then moving to Assisi, where he wrote his award-winning book about St. Francis called The Sun and Moon Over Assisi, to then founding Pax Et Bonum Communications, where for 20 years he traveled the world into the poorest slums on the planet and made some 20 films about extreme poverty, which have been shown all over the country and which you can now watch for free online. And then he moved to Haiti and started an orphanage. And so I want to ask him about some of these things, and mainly his new book, which is called The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty, which is available online and at Amazon and everywhere. And all the proceeds go to the orphanage in Haiti. I've known Gerry for over 25 years. He's the author of many other great books, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So Gerry Straub, welcome to the Nonviolent Jesus podcast.
Well, thanks, John.
Hey, congratulations on this new book, which tells your amazing story, which is hard to sum up in a sentence, but from Hollywood to filming documentaries among the poorest of the poor, to moving to Haiti, to setting up this amazing orphanage, which I visited just before the pandemic, the Santa Chiara Children's Center. I thought there's so much to talk about, and I hope everyone will get your book, The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty, and dig more into Gerry's journey. But let's focus on the films and on Santa Chiara in Haiti. So you've made over 20 very powerful films about extreme poverty all over the world. And now you've put them all for free online for people to watch, and maybe even better, for church groups, conferences, and schools to use. I think your website is paxetbonumcom.org, which we'll spell, and I'll repeat it later. So tell me about the films first, about making movies about the poor at the service of the poor.
Well, I guess it began, but I was just trying to understand St. Francis's love of the poor, and not just of the poor, but of poverty itself, which really made no sense to me. So I actually lived in a soup kitchen that the friars, Franciscan friars, operated in Philadelphia. And I was so amazed. I got some friends of mine from Good Morning America, and we made a very simple film on their life. And amazingly, it wound up on PBS. On just not the whole network, but maybe 60 or 70% of the stations took the film, and it generated about $250,000 for the Friars to build a new and better soup kitchen. And I knew in that experience that putting the power, I could put the power of film at the service of the poor, and so it began. Uh, uh, it began to actually the first thing that happened is the Minister General of the Franciscan Order read my book on St. Francis, the son of Moon Over Assisi, and he actually wrote me a personal letter and wanted to meet me. And I had next time I was in Rome. And I met him and I told him that I wanted to go deeper into the bloated belly of poverty by living with friars around the world who were serving the poor, living the self-emptying love of Christ. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm just going to, observe, take some notes, maybe take some photos." And amazingly, he blessed this idea and arranged for me to visit, I think, like 13 cities in about a year and a half. And that's when I really started entering into extreme poverty. And all I really knew was, television visuals. And so I started making films. And we showed these films at Catholic schools and universities to try to show the people the real plight of the poor, and to connect it to our faith, which compels us to do something to relieve that suffering. And so, that's how it started. And yeah.
So in your book, The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty, you walk us through the making of so many of those films, and they're literally around the world. So it's such an unusual book. I was telling Leanne, the producer, that I think you have been in the poorest places on the planet, maybe more than anybody else I know, except for maybe Mother Teresa. And so it's an incredible experience you've had. Can you tell us about one or two of the films briefly to give us a taste of them?
Well, yeah. There was just so many stories in each of the films, individual people that really stood out to me. But I guess the one that it really comes to mind the fastest is a film I made in Uganda in 2009, in which we at that time there was sort of the tail end of a civil war in Uganda, and the place was just falling apart. And we were in the north of Haiti, north of Uganda rather, and we managed one day to be out in the bush, where very few people went. And we were driving, and the car got stuck in the sand, and so I just got out and wandered into a little hamlet uh, consisting of just three huts made of mud and sticks and like a grass roof. And there was nobody there, but in the middle of a little common area, the middle of these three shacks, there were three huts rather, there were two children lying on the ground, half naked, not moving. And I walked up to them and was just so overwhelmed by the sight of them. Uh, their behinds were shriveled and laced with deep lines. They had tiny bones and dried out skin, and they were only wearing like tattered, dirty T-shirts. And I just began taking photographs and literally getting down on the ground and filming them. I mean, their faces were covered with mud and flies, and I really didn't even know how to respond to this. And we later found out that they actually had polio, which is why they weren't moving. And as I was filming, a little girl emerges from the bush carrying water, and turned out to be their own older sister, who all she could do for them was to bathe them. So she walked for some miles to get water, and we could see that they were just skin and bones. They were on the verge of starvation, and this became just such an amazing thing to see and to film. And so I wrote about it in my journals when I got back. And we managed to, while I was still in Uganda, we managed to transport the kids to some German missionaries to rehabilitate them nutritionally. And eventually one of my donors supported them to get them to a major hospital in Kampala, where they were treated for their polio. And so the film, the clips from the film of those two kids became the way I ended every presentation I gave at high schools and universities, and it just so moved people. They never really forgot those two kids, Sam and Esther.
And your book has, well, for the listeners, Gerry's a world-class photographer, and you have a lot of photos in the book, including of those beautiful kids. And there's, is it Esther who did, or
Yeah.
Jane, who later on is doing really well now?
Oh yeah, Jane. I kind of sponsored Jane for a little while. Yeah. She's the older one. There's the older sister, and she just graduated from university.
Yeah,
with a degree in English literature.
See,
but the big thing was when I was back in Hollywood and trying to put this film together, and it was such a tough ministry to try to, pull together. And I was really down one day, and I went into my office, and on the answering machine there was a call from Jane, and it just simply said, "This is Jane. I am happy. Thank you." And I remember just becoming so elated at that simple message, or whatever depression I was feeling, or struggles I was having were just lifted. That this girl was able to say that and express thanks. And now I was given maybe about a year ago photos of her in her cap and gown, graduated from college.
Amazing.
And I knew this was all because of a film, that really wasn't meant for entertainment. It was just meant to help people who were, living the self-emptying love of Christ, serving the poor, to give them a tool that they could raise money. So that's how.
So a lot of your films end up being used by the local folks to raise money for their projects.
Right.
What's so amazing, you have this state-of-the-art website now, and you've put all of the photos and all your books, but now all the films for free. You've given them over to the world. Tell me about that. And I want to spell this because I want all of our listeners to check out Gerry's work. The website is paxetbonumcom.org, as in Pax Et Bonum, peace and all good. It's Latin. Communications, PAXETBONUMCOMM.org. But you can just Google Gerry Straub and you'll see him. Tell me about the website and how people can get the films.
Well, and originally we sold the films and when it was on DVD, but now everything is streaming and all of that, and people don't even have DVD players anymore. So we just decided that to put them on for free. So Pax Et Bonum Communications, that's what the COMM means. And so teachers use the films, use clips from the films in like social justice classes. Just last month I was in a university in Kentucky and in the cathedral in Kentucky showing clips from the films, just telling the story of how I went from, not only from a Hollywood television producer, but an atheist, into, being in the poorest place on earth, all over through.
Literally,
we were filmed in refugee camps in northern Uganda years later, and in Kenya, all through South America, filmed lepers in Brazil, I mean, in Honduras, El Salvador,
India.
uh, India, oh my word. And
So, Gerry, and again, folks, I really invite you to check out Gerry's films and contact him or invite him to come and speak to your church or university and let him show some of the films, because it's very hard to bring extreme global poverty to affluent American Christian churches and schools. And you do that well, and just show it and then
I
invite
used
people to respond, right?
I used to say I made films no one wants to see with money I didn't have.
You're still doing it. So then, okay, you call me one day and you've moved to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, which didn't surprise me. I was like, that was kind of where all this incredible journey of yours was headed. And you have no money, and you're in a little apartment, and then you're telling me later an orphan girl named Baby shows up at your apartment, and then a few days later all these other children show up, and at one point you have 72 kids. And you found Santa Chiara Children's Center, this orphanage, and now you have a school and 66 full-time staff, including teachers and nurses, and you still have no money, and somehow it's all God. This is all proof for
Well,
because you
it's
raised
really
700,000 a year. So tell us all about Santa Chiara and the children of Haiti.
it was done by this radical trust in God that St. Francis had. His idea was if he had nothing, he would have to depend upon God for everything. And I was in Haiti during the earthquake, the aftermath of the earthquake. I was invited to travel with doctors and nurses right days after the earthquake. And it was such a nightmare. I mean, there were just bodies all over the place. And we lived in one of the hospitals that was not damaged. And it was just wall-to-wall pain and suffering. And after that, I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I kept going back to Haiti because I wanted to see what was going on and how they were recovering from this incredible disaster. And then on one of those trips, through someone I knew, I met this little girl named Baby, who was only 10 years old, and she just sort of adopted me. And I was able to sponsor her to go to school. She was living with an aunt who was in very bad situation and circumstances, and but I would be in contact with her via phone all the time. And then she got sick, and I went back to Haiti for her first communion, and then I saw how bad she was, and no one could figure out what was wrong. And I took her all over Port-au-Prince to try to find what was the cause. And eventually it was a kidney problem, and she had to have a surgery, and we arranged for that. And then afterwards, I couldn't let her go back to where she was living. So I got a little apartment, and I hired someone to watch her when I wasn't there. And eventually, what was happening is all the little kids in this slum started coming to us, and Baby and I were just making sandwiches. She was 15 by this time for the kids. And as I was taking her around Port-au-Prince, I saw what the real problem was, is that all the poor women, the single moms who were selling things on the street, had they had to take the kids with them. And I thought, wow, if we could only have a center where the moms could drop off their kids for the day, a daycare center, and we could take care of them during the day. They pick them up at night, and how hard could that be? And so we moved into a bigger place, and that's what we tried to do. And in the first month, some 22 mothers dropped their kids off in the morning and never came back. And so suddenly I had an orphanage, and I had no idea what to do, how to do it. We had power only a few hours a day. And how was I going to feed all these kids? But somehow it just kept growing. And the more I wrote about it, the more people donated, and it was still a very violent place. And it was I'm amazed it lasted. No one ever thought it would last, you know. And you were the first and only friend who ever came to see it for yourself, and you were in our I guess the third house when you came.
which is an amazing place, and the kids are so spectacular. I was, and so Gerry's book, friends, I'm encouraging everyone to get it. The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty. And the subtitle is The Unscripted Journey of a Hollywood Producer to the Worst Slums on Earth and an Orphanage in Haiti. And it's full of photos, and it's one of the great transformation stories. Gerry, you have a beautiful line in there where Santa Chiara, you call it the school of life. And I wondered if you could say about that, because that was my experience. We hear about Haiti as this place of death, and it is. There's so many killings and the anarchy now and all the coups and the destruction.
You know,
Certainly one of the poorest places. But when you walk into your place, there's so much life, and compared to the United States. And it's been life-giving for you, right? So tell me about the life of the kids and how it's brought, if you will, new life, or the experience of the power of God there in all of this, in the kids,
well,
Gerry, in
well,
life and
well,
all.
well, for me, it was a transition of like going from filming the poor to living with the poor. And that was such an amazing difference, you know, to experience what it was like to have to, every drop of water you drank or used to bathe or clean things had to be hauled in, you know. And the Santa Clara became for me a school of life, in that I really learned how to, you know, what was really, really important in life. And the children themselves uh, really, really were transforming me, you know, how to live truly this kind of self-emptying love. And the kids had been through so much. I mean, so much. We took in abandoned kids and abused kids, kids that no one wanted. And it was only by teaching them that, or letting them experience what it was like to be loved, was some kind of change possible. Uh, and so, for instance, one kid was actually born in City Soleil, the worst slum. His mother was 15 years old, and she had him right in the street. And seconds after the baby was born, she somehow cut the cord, gave the baby to an old woman, and said, "I'm just going to go get help, hold my baby." And of course, she never came back. And the woman took care of the baby for about 5 days, but she was so poor, she only gave him tea. So she brought him to Santa Chiara. And of course, he was so sickly that the staff didn't really want to keep him because we didn't know how we could take care of him. And I said, well, if we let him leave with this old woman, he's going to die, and we can't let that happen. And so I named him Moise. I got in my car, went down and got some strong formula, and he lived with me for 9 months. And now he's 4 years old, and he's like the prince of of Santa Chiara. He's funny, he's smart, and so all the kids come with these stories of abuse and abandonment and deep psychological scars. And we've over the years managed to hire nurses and doctors and psychologists and social workers to treat them, to help them deal with the issues that they had. But the most important thing is that they had to learn to take care of each other. And because of you and your
Well, I want to
teaching
ask you
me
about that.
about nonviolence, that became, in this place of extreme violence, we wanted the children to live a nonviolent life, because they were just constantly hitting each other and fighting with each other.
How
And
did you do that then? Tell us how you did that?
well, yeah, I don't really know. I just had to
Well, you
keep
said that
explaining to them
there was
that
one rule in the whole place.
that's it.
Everybody
You
had to be.
cannot, and
We're not.
you couldn't talk bad to anybody,
You
and
couldn't hit
so
anybody. You couldn't hurt any.
couldn't never hit anybody. And this was really hard. This was really hard for them because they knew nothing but that. Well, just one quick little story. There was a little girl named Isnida. She was 8 years old, and I called her Izzy. I gave all the kids names so I could remember and pronounce. And at that time, the kids were going to an external Christian school. She came home one day and she said, "Dad, a boy hit me," and the principal of the Christian school asked her, "Did you hit him back?" And Isnida said to the principal, "No." And then the principal asked, "Well, why didn't you hit him back?" And she said, "Oh, Papa Gerry wouldn't like that." And I knew at that moment, John, that this message of nonviolence had penetrated into this violent place, at least in one little girl. And it took a lot of time and a lot of correcting. And 2 years ago, during summer school, because we have summer school, which is more like fun and games, we had a guy come in and give a seminar for a week on peace and nonviolence. It was all in Creole, so I don't know what he was saying, but he apparently really was, that this was his thing. And that, to me, was the only way that the situation in Haiti would change. When people began to understand that violence is just completely unacceptable.
Well, you offer so much hope there and such a light of possibilities in the midst of certainly one of the poorest places on the planet, at the footstep of the United States, right there off Florida, and one of the most violent places on the planet, totally connected to our history. And you've been telling me even recently that this unconditional love that you've practiced with the kids and that you've invited them to practice to one another, rooted in a nonviolent life. Okay, everybody's going to be nonviolent. You've seen a lot of the kids really change and then suddenly go from being very difficult and problematic to kind and then leaders to the other younger kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One kid in particular, Bensi, was the worst
Bensi,
kid
yeah.
possible.
Tell us about Bensi.
She was just, you couldn't, she would talk back, use vile language that, you couldn't even believe that this kid even knew. And, and she just was, and so just difficult. And no matter how you would like punish her, and I don't mean, I mean just like isolating her, no matter what, she didn't care. She just would take whatever we dished out and just go right back to being. And I was criticized for forgiving her, for constantly trying to love her, and like I was not being helpful, But I said that Christ asked us to forgive, 70 times, 7 times. We have to just keep loving. And eventually, she turned the corner. It took like 4 or 5 years. And now she is like an angel. I can't believe it when I see her bending down and talking to some little kid about how to behave. It's like, and it all it was unconditional love. She knew no matter, they said that she was pushing me the whole time. How will I make this man break and hit me? And it never happened. How could I do something that he won't forgive? And it never happened. And so that was the miracle of it. It was just pure loving them and forgiving them all the time. It was, people were criticizing it. Many of the staff, everyone wanted her out. Even the kids wanted her out. Now she's like, to me, the real living example that transformation is possible, even under the worst circumstances possible. I mean, for 5 or 6 years, the soundtrack of my life was, screaming kids and gunfire. And in this horrible place, something beautiful was created.
It's such an amazing story. And again, folks, I really invite you to get his new book, The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty. There's really nothing out there like it. And because his story is so wild, from Hollywood to Haiti and everywhere in the whole world in between. You, there.
I
You,
want to just say, I
yeah,
just
go
want to
ahead.
say one thing.
Hmm.
I said, I feel like that by encountering the poor, I came to see my own really very real interior poverty with, within all the external riches that I had. And I am so grateful for the grace that opened my heart and eyes to the love and tenderness of God and God's overflowing mercy and compassion. No matter the struggles and suffering I personally endured amid this barbaric violence where twice gangs tried to kill me and that didn't happen. That's a story in itself. All this violence that I witnessed, I would rather today be in Haiti with my kids than any other place on earth. And it's breaking my heart being in Florida.
Mm. Well, thank you for that testimony. So, Gerry, how can people support you? Tell us about the Santa Chiara website and what can people do to support the children there at Santa Chiara and therefore to make some gesture to the hope and the even
Yeah.
love that you, the light you're shining from, of all places, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Tell us what we can do.
Yeah, well, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, right now is in the throes of the worst violence ever. The gangs control 90% of the city. Over 9,600 people have been killed since 2024. Thousands of people have been driven from their houses. The gangs are decapitating people, burning people alive, burning down entire neighborhoods, and nobody is paying attention to it. And so for me, the Santa Chiara Children's Center, which we have a website called santachiaracc.org. Uh, what's really most important is this violence has driven up the cost of operating the place. It was always hard. I was always in debt. But now it's the annual budget has ballooned to like $700,000 a year, $50,000 a month, which just seems insurmountable to me, even though we've always been on the edge of bankruptcy for all this time. But the only way I can do it is to have more speaking events. The sales from the books all go to support Santa Chiara. But speaking events are the most important. Over the 15 years before going to Haiti, I did about 260 poverty and prayer presentations at schools and churches all across the United States and in Europe. And once the people see the clips of the films of the individual children and the extreme living conditions they have, and they hear my conversion story and they hear about my journey, they they really want to help. I mean, people who have seen Sam and Esther like 10 years ago still know these kids. They know all the children's names from my journal. And so that's the big thing is getting more speaking events. And so
So
all the
people can write
information,
you?
and they can write to me. They can
Where? On the
uh,
Santa
uh,
Chiara website.
the Santa Chiara website. There's a link to they can donate via PayPal, uh, or they can just send a check to Vero Beach. There's a post office box listed on the website, and so that's what we depend on. And we barely have enough money to even make it to Christmas, and so uh,
So
it's
let's,
difficult.
folks, let's try to help Santa Chiara and the kids in Haiti. It's a start of what we can do to reach out. Gerry, it's a blessing as always to be with you and listen to you. Our time is up, really. I'm wondering if you have any last words of encouragement that you'd like to offer our listeners in light of your journey and for their journey.
Yeah, well, the big thing that is uh, nonviolence and all of its daily manifestations, large to small, is the only way to go. And we begin by being nonviolent with ourselves. That is to stop beating ourselves up over our mistakes and failures and to become more merciful to our own selves and then extend that mercy to others. And so that really is the key. We're called to be compassionate and merciful, starting with ourselves and then reaching out to others.
Well, thank you so much, Gerry Straub, for speaking with me today. And dear friends, please check out santachiaracc.org and order a copy of his new book, The Cross of Love, The Pain of Poverty, which you can get on Amazon or anywhere. And
Yeah, some guy named John Deere wrote the foreword
oh,
to the
God,
book.
yeah.
It's on Amazon, so
And then Pax Et Bonum, COMM.org, has all his films, and I hope people will invite Gerry in to speak. And please make a donation to Santa Chiara. As generous you can be. Gerry writes a daily journal about life in Haiti, which is free, and you can sign up and get that there. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Nonviolent Jesus podcast. You can hear more podcasts and find other upcoming Zoom programs at www.beatitudecenter.org. And please consider offering a donation to support this free work. And if you can, maybe some positive feedback or a review at the National Catholic Reporter or Apple or Spotify or YouTube or Substack or whatever platform you use. And please help spread the word about the Nonviolent Jesus podcast by telling all your friends and colleagues and your church friends, folk, about it. May the God of peace bless you all. Let's all keep on following the Nonviolent Jesus. See you next time.